am mainly interested in anything email creative. I'm a creative director and I oversee an agency at Yes Marketing. And so what we're going to do today is just talk about some before and after creative makeovers. So just a quick show of hands, who controls email layouts or design, content, process, coding? Okay, so this might be useful to you. I'm just going to kind of quickly go through what we changed, some of the things we learned, and maybe it can be helpful to you if this is a topic that you have to go through. With the time, we're going to, again, breeze through in kind of a rapid order of our email overhaul for Marriott and Olive Garden, Choice Hotels, and others. We're lucky enough to work on these large brands, and they're very large email programs. So hopefully we can show you some of that. Now, first of all, thank you again to MediaPost, an amazing event. Such a great place to be, Deer Valley. I mean, incredible. I absolutely love this place. Another show of hands. How many snowboarders in the room? Okay, a couple snowboarders. I apologize. They still don't allow snowboarding here. Have you ever heard this one? What's the difference between a snowboarder and a vacuum cleaner? How the dirt bag is attached? No? All right, save that one. That's a good one. Anyway, thanks again. It's a great conference. Too bad it's such a dump. So I have been in email a long time. I don't know. I was talking to old friends. I don't know how I've been doing this for so long, but I actually started in email in the year 2000. And my colleague here from Portland, Matt Hickman, and I were part of a company called At Once. At Once was an early ESP, and we were lucky enough to get a company called Nike as our first client. And then we were lucky enough to do early email marketing for Nintendo, Warner Brothers, and others. And around 2006, we were purchased by Infogroup and combined with YesMail. So that's kind of who we are. That's a photo of me on my first day of work, not at work, where I was dressed as a bee. And the drummer in the house band that was playing had drank too much or smoked too much, or I don't even want to know. It was like a doctor on the plane. Does anyone play the drums? I was like, I do. All right, put the bee on the set. So that was my first day of work and a memorable day for me. So I've actually been with the company just this year for 19 years, which, again, 2 companies. So just real quick, a little bit about us. Yes Marketing, formerly known as YesMail. YesMail is our ESP, but we do a lot more than just ESP work. Yes Marketing is technology, services, and data to really help our clients. In particular, the group that I run is the agency. So we're about 20-ish designers and copywriters. We have an office in Chicago and New York and then out in the West. And again, we largely focus on email creative. These are some of the clients who we help on a day-to-day basis. So we not only create their email template systems, we create all their email for them and do all the campaign services that go with it. So we're really lucky to work with these companies. And in terms of our particular products, this is what we do best. Again, email template systems and the campaigns that come with them, but then really anything that touches email. So the ads, the social, landing pages, and other. We are owned by Infogroup. Is Lori still here? Lori Colantano? No, perhaps not. Lori works for Infogroup. She was sitting out here at the table today. Infogroup is a large data provider, so consumer, business, and all the services that go with data. We're very excited about our most recent product, which is called Data Axle, which allows even people like me to go in and use the tools to get access to data and see, that's interesting. By putting that in, I can actually get it, get interesting data and results back. So Infogroup. Okay, so I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Again, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. But we're going to look at what we did before and after with creative makeovers. Now, before we start, just a little bit about template systems. So, email template systems are a bedrock for how we work, and they're really just a single HTML document. They're a series of stacked modules, And what we do, even though all of the designers on my team went to art school and they're not developers, what we do is we create email template systems, and they're a series of stacked modules where you can duplicate, delete, and reorder the modules based on the email content that you're making at the time. So it's a way that we work, which we call design into code. So even though all of our designers went to art school, they're not developers, we actually create new email directly in code, which means we're picking and choosing different modules to create long scrolling newsletters or short postcards. And that really is the basis for how we work. So when we come into a company who wants to modernize their email, we start with the template system. Templates to us does not mean the same thing over and over again. The way we use templates, we actually require our staff to never do the same thing twice, meaning we can always push and pull that code to get fresh, unique layouts. So email template systems are really what we're going to be talking about here with these different makeovers. So since 2013, we've been lucky enough to help Marriott with their email marketing. We came in and overhauled the look and feel of their program, and it is a large, complex program. Marriott is an absolutely great client to work with, very organized, very efficient, and their email channel is astoundingly successful. So in 2013, we did we've actually done 3 different overhauls with this entire program. And this is what it looked like before. So it had a very dominant header at the top, as you can see here. I just want to use the pointer because I've got a pointer. But a very dominant header at the top that had different user merges in it. So especially for the most common or their highest reward audience, they would see their current balance, for example, make sure that their recent stays were shown in there. But it definitely got in the way. Even though that thing works very well, that status bar and the search, by the way, that search, see that? Search Marriott Rewards, we tested into that. As a graphic designer, I was like, we cannot put that in there. And it won the test, and so we had to put that in the search bar. But anyway, this is what it looked like before. Decent layout, still responsive, but what we were going through with the Bonvoy redesign was to make sure we're bringing through that new brand. I learned a lot by watching Marriott and Starwood merge, just sort of on the sides and what they did. But we had basically about 6 months from the time we learned about the word Bonvoy and the colors and the brand to redesigning and getting the entire email program updated by their deadline. So it was a pretty rapid evolution. So this isn't much to look at, but this is the template that drives all Marriott Bonvoy creative today. So on the left, you can see that tower of a layout, but really what the template system is a wide variety of different features. If you look at the top here, this is our workhorse. How we organize our features and how they look, whether it's one or if we stack 10 of those in a single layout, that is what we use a lot. And then the other thing you'll notice is this. I know the theme of this weekend has been relevancy and information related to our audience. This is Marriott's status bar. These have become pretty common if you have the data. But this thing performs so well that they have to actually, this thing will have more of the layout up. And we even do one of our layouts where we put that status bar right on the image. And it's all made of code, again, for monthly updates. All right. Showing users, especially those that are elite platinum, what their current points are at. And then we also decoupled that search bar and put it further down in the layout as well. On some of these features, what we do is, as many of you know, it's not totally easy to have words made of code, not images, buttons made of code, not images, and have it be floating over an image. Okay? On the modern web, that's easy. But in the inbox HTML that we have to deal with, as many of you know, it's not. So what we were able to do there, again, through a hack that makes it look good on Outlook and Gmail and others, is again, that feature module where we're having that float above it. In addition to that, we also were able to equip our designers to be able to change the background so that they could have a different image for mobile, which freed us up a lot because they're always kind of doing a dance for how it looks on the small screen, and now they could just say, okay, desktop and mobile, and move forward. Another thing that we learned from Pinterest, frankly, is background color blocking. So remember, when your email comes into the inbox, you see who it's from, you see the sender, the pre-header, etc. There is a moment of time while that is loading in there. And again, if your email is made of all images and it's loading and you can't see anything, you give it 2-3 seconds, delete. With us, since we're always making sure our layouts are readable and clickable with images off, we actually have a little script that just looks at the picture and takes a hex color and puts it behind it. Again, just like Pinterest, if you've ever been there, it's kind of loading in. You have that background color blocking, and we've actually done that across the board. And then other smaller things like CSS mouse effects, mouse overs, add a little bit more interactivity. And then one of the things for us is when we did the first Marriott template, we had our sort of fixed mobile width, and then more and more phones came out. We changed up our code, which we call Responsive 2.0, which allows our code to go wall to wall. So that was a big thing we brought in. One other thing, if you're ever doing a redesign, these little things called stretchy bands, which we call scroll interrupters, are a great way to add little tips, really to change the layout, especially for long layouts. And then I just want to pause one sec. So when we overhaul a template system, it's pretty easy to get started and create new email. But as many of you know, there's a large backlog of triggers that probably exist, and Marriott had literally hundreds of triggers. When we go through and do a template redesign, we have our new template system. We get that done, we get day-to-day publishing in order, but then we have a sort of separate methodology for updating our triggers. And I just threw this in here because I know there's many people who oversee these types of campaigns. And our approach for triggers is we, get every single trigger up on a single web page. So let's make sure the entire team or client, everyone can see the current trigger, what it looks like. We can get a direct URL to it. But then number two, what has been extremely helpful for us with Marriott in particular is frequently used content. Unfortunately for us, FUC has a very tough abbreviation, and I see it a lot in our email threads. We should have named it frequently used gallery, for example. But anyway, the FUC exists to this day. What it is, as many of you might have, you say a lot of the same thing over and over again in brand marketing. And so what we have done is really just basically said, we're going to put it once on a web gallery, and we can reuse it over and over again. And that sped our trigger overhauls up a lot. We weren't rewriting everything. And then, frankly, an icon library to go with it. So here's an example of that frequently used content and those icons. Okay, so how did it perform? The triggers performed very well. I mean, the one thing that's great about the business that I am in is that redesigns work. When you redesign, you should be doing it at least every 2 years, but I'd say every 9 months you need to start getting ready for a redesign, because changing your layouts, even though it's, we got to test it, we got to make sure it doesn't perform worse. In my experience, it almost always performs better. So we were lucky enough to see a lot of good results when we overhauled. All right, moving on, I'm just going to touch on Olive Garden. We started working with Olive Garden about 5 years ago. This is what it looked like before. I love coming in when layouts need a lot of work because it makes us look great. And this is a layout that needs a lot of work. That brown color it's a really interesting color to put with food. So we were able to come in and say, we're going to get rid of that brown. We wanted an updated look. We really wanted to elevate the food. And so this is what Olive Garden looks like today. And again, it uses a template system, and it practices what we call never the same thing twice. So we're always keeping it changing and fresh and unique. And again, our main goal was really to simplify it, to clean it up, and show off the food, craveable food. So again, like the Marriott layouts. Minimalism to us is a big thing, so a very clean, simple header. We reduced a lot of the things that people weren't clicking on. We hide our pre-header. We like to keep everything as minimal as possible. And then with Olive Garden, even though we had a lot of resistance going in doing this, we brought in a play that we call sticky content, where we actually have a copy and content director who works on site at Darden. But what she does is she makes these bite-sized little, almost social-like, snackable content pieces. She does it in 3-month intervals and makes them before the email is even started, based, looking at an email calendar. But sticky content is basically, it's like a little Hershey's Kiss at the bottom of an email. And the whole reason why we do it is we put sticky content in email really to train users to open. So we know people are at work, they're busy, they're on Excel, whatever. Oh, something came in from Olive Garden, they entertained me last time. I know it's going to be short and quick, I'll take a look. So not only did we redesign the layouts, we also were able to add bite-sized little pieces of content to keep people opening. And then also with them, we've done a lot of interactive emails like carousels and this one. If you're a real email geek, I guess it won't work. But parallax scrolling, where we have an object stay in one place and the layout behind it moves. The hamburger menu and others. We do a heck of a lot of GIFs. Email marketer designers are really now probably spending more time animating than they are designing, because quite frankly, when we see it, it works. Adding motion and GIFs to layouts, when we test them side by side, we'll actually see a slight increase with those that use it. Olive Garden also had Save to Phone. They used Vibes mobile wallet. In the past, they said, print this out or show it to your server. Their Save to Phone adoption was probably I think it's still to this day probably Vibe's best implementation and most used in terms of their audience. But allowing coupons to be added to the phones is key. So overall, how it performed, the one thing about Olive Garden that I would say is when we were brought in, their open rates had descended below 16%, and they basically said, like, if we break this threshold, we're going to make a change. We were lucky enough to come in and help them with that. Today, their open rates in the mid-20s, and it actually went up. So ascending open rate was over a year's time based on our redesign, but really I believe that sticky content is one of the reasons why that went up. So we were lucky enough to see a lot of good results from Olive Garden's redesign. Okay, just a few more. So Marriott isn't the only hotel that we work for. We also service Choice Hotels. If you've ever taken a road trip, you've seen one of these signs. You've probably stayed there. Choice Hotels based in Maryland as well. When we came in, they had an in-house team. In-house email or creative teams in general are great because they're efficient and affordable, but they tend to, in my experience, to kind of lack innovation. And so a wide variety of their layouts were just kind of done one-off, done really with kind of a print-based look and feel, a lot of what we call wallow texts in there, which are big blocks of copy, things that we try to eliminate. So with Choice Hotels, we really just like the other two, we wanted to modernize and update their look and feel. So this is what it looked like after. Again, adding more white space to me is really the easiest way to make layouts look better, but better typography, etc. One of the things we learned with Choice Hotels, again, focusing on the header, is this. The responsive header, we tested into this, but you can see like even the logo, for example, changes when it goes to the small screen. We're basically showing only the most important things in the mobile view. So we greet the person, we show them their points, we make sure that search bar is in there. As you notice, it goes from a large search bar to a smaller one. Working on that header was a really interesting test plan, but something that really has changed the way we look at how the top of emails look. They too have a status bar that is in their monthly newsletter for their elite users. And it too, of course, was responsive as well. All right, so those are some of the different looks from Choice Hotels. So overall, it performed well. Again, change your layout and enjoy a slight performance boost in the short term, but really updating it, getting a more consistent look and feel will drive a much better program. All right, just a couple more. So Spartan race. Has anyone here run a Spartan race? So Spartan is one of these races where you do stuff like this. I'm not a Spartan racer, but mud and fire, whatever. So before Spartan looked a little text heavy, they have a brand that relies on the color black, which can be kind of a challenge in the inbox overall. So we wanted to keep that dark brand palette, but we really did want to lighten it up, improve the type and others. So this is what it looked like after. And with them, what was neat is using data and personalization is that if you're a Spartan racer, we had a variety of almost sort of Strava-like inputs on them, their last race, gamification elements. And so we were able to blend those into all their emails, effectively make small modules that use data based on whether or not they raced recently, how they performed. So a lot of the same innovations that we did before, like selectable text over imagery, and again, things like this, showing goals, fitness goals, and things that they've done recently. One thing that was neat about this is that one of our designers, a guy named Scott Sider in Seattle, was talking about is he said, look, we've all got big monitors. We're also focused on mobile views. What about desktop views? And so one thing that was cool about this is that Scott, when he was working on this, optimized the desktop view. So what I mean is if you open this in Gmail, for example, and you're on a large monitor, and you have the space, the feature image, which is also a background image, will scale up to 1,000 pixels. So you don't have sort of that open space on either side. Again, email geekery, it's not a big deal, but it does optimize the desktop view by giving you a really dominant large image. So that was one thing we learned from that, and that we do quite a bit. It too uses the status bar. Again, merging in user data, increasing personalization. So overall, again, we saw a really rapid change in this email program, in particular with their revenue. We emailed more targeted, and then, of course, we increased the amount of users on their list. So Spartan performed well. That same designer, great designer, Scott Sider, also assisted us when we worked on Bed Bath & Beyond. This was another great example of you love the low-hanging fruit. I mean, their layouts were interesting, let's put it that way. So they were all image-based. They had so much different type going on and things just happening in general. We knew right away we were going to be able to make a big difference. So again, like a lot of our layouts, we calmed things down. Much more white space, much more interesting typography, and we also added a content plan to that as well. So Bed Bath & Beyond, again, the similar themes that we've talked about over and over, cleaning up the header, making things a lot more simple and easy to read. Web type for us has been huge, so frankly, Google Fonts or hosting our own fonts is such a great way to make your emails look better, not just, again, relying on that sort of base Arial. And maps. One of the big things we learned with Marriott and we've taken through to Olive Garden and others is putting maps, location information in the footer has been extremely useful for our clients. I'm going to kind of skip through this for the sake of time. So overall, Bed Bath has moved to using this templated approach. They also have moved to the same methodology that we use, again, creating new emails directly into code. And then the last one of these, I'm just going to go through quickly, is PayPal. We work with this amazing person, Kathy Montgomery at eBay and PayPal. Kathy brought us in when they wanted to change and update their layouts. They about 4 years ago, they updated with their new brand. And they have a huge transactional ecosystem, a lot of emails going out at any given moment. But they are all very utilitarian. They put their new logo on their layouts, but they wanted to kind of bring that through. So this was about a 9-month project where we looked at everything they did, and this is what we came through afterwards. And even now, to this day, when I get an email from PayPal, it makes me happy. Again, making it look easy to read, scannable, simple, clear. It is an extremely complex email program, so it could come from PayPal or any number of their clients. So we designed a multi-header system. And again, reining in that typography. The grid system on this particular layout was probably one of the more complex grid systems that we've ever used for alignment. So subtle, clean, keeping it simple. And yeah, so one of the cool things, just to finish up about PayPal was their subtle use of gradients. Thanks to Instagram, we see gradients, color gradients, all over quite a bit. We designed a way to put gradients in using just pure code as opposed to loading images, and then have a flat color fallback. So, in summary, the things that we went through here, if I could summarize kind of our top 10, is we really do believe in template systems. We love minimalism and just reducing clutter. Of course, the layouts have to be responsive. And then adding content. Content is like the fertilizer for these email programs. It's what keeps people opening. It's the hardest thing to do, but it has to be there in a consistent fashion. Web fonts, these user status bars, mouse over effects, that under image color blocking. Only an email geek could get excited about under image color blocking. But really challenging our teams to do new layouts using a template. That's probably one of the ways that we use it best. So hopefully you had something that can help with perhaps your next redesign. If you're interested, we do have our lookbooks, which showcase some of our work, and we're always open to give free email audits to any Email Insider participant, which means basically show us a handful of your email layouts, and we'll sort of put it through our scorecard and suggest ways that it could be improved. So thank you very much to MediaPost. Sorry for going over. And great to see you all. Thanks again.
All right, Matt. You know what? Welcome back.
Thanks, great to see you.
After 20 years. No, the Email Insider Summit is complete now that we have Matt Caldwell back doing a presentation. Matt, are you solo here? Oh, you said you had Matt, Mr. Hickman here. Well, I thought you might be skiing or something. So if you have questions for Matt or Matt, grab these guys at some point today or after the break, and we're going to go right into the keynote, right? Are we going to go to the next thing? Okay. Again, big round of applause for Matt Caldwell, always bringing a different angle to the presentations here. We love that. Okay, Steve?
And proposals for case studies for the show in the spring. So please ping me on the site. I'd love to talk to all of you. And safe travels for everybody going back. How many of you have used the app Gas Buddy? If you haven't, this is an app. We discovered Gas Buddy as a friend of ours last year when we did our in-app marketing event. This is an app that has a wealth of data, location data, behavioral data, the ways in which people are going through their everyday lives. And Kristen Healy, who's the senior manager of CRM at Gas Buddy, is going to talk. She's been working in email for over 7 years, but part of her job at Gas Buddy is to work omni-channel messaging, to talk across the various channels that a mobile app has at its disposal. And she's going to be talking about the ways in which they make their choices and parse their communications across those channels, when and where to ping people in real time about the information that matters most to them. Please welcome Kristen Healy.
Morning, everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying this beautiful view. I know I'm going to miss the breaking at 2 o'clock for activity time, so I'm going to bring that home to the office when I get home. So today I'm going to talk about basically what is Gas Buddy and kind of the email and mobile strategies that we use to message our users, given all the data that we have and kind of the things that we look at every single day to try to get these messages in front of the user at the right time. I'll go into a little bit about what messaging channel that we choose, kind of based on the trends that we're seeing. So what is Gas Buddy? If you don't know about Gas Buddy, we help users, our drivers, find the best price on gas near them in a variety of different ways. So some users come to our app just to check gas prices. Prices can range anywhere from 40 to 50 cents in your area. We also notice that prices change up to 5 times a day at a certain station. So we try to encourage our users to go into the app to be checking, before work, after work, because prices fluctuate a lot. We have over 80 million downloads. The app's been around since 2010. We also offer a fuel savings program that we've built in-house that is a nationwide fuel savings program. It saves you on every gallon. I'll talk about that in a second. And we partner with consumer brands to offer free gas back to our users. So Pay with Gas Buddy, I'll just give a little brief overview of this because a lot of the messaging that I work on is for this program. And the examples you'll see relate to this program. So it's our free fuel savings program. We have over 650,000 members, and we've saved members $10 million since we launched in September of 2017, just on gas alone. In the past year, we've kind of changed the program to be able to offer more free gas to our users. So if you make a purchase within the Gas Buddy app, say through Walmart or an Uber ride, you'll get money back on your account just by making that purchase through our app. So we offer it free gas instead of cash back for our program. So having this card lets users redeem this money. So when they go to the pump, their price is less than it would be without the card. So to start it off, I'll go into a couple examples about how we use behavioral data to incentivize our users. So our users, from doing user interviews and surveys, we know that gas is a major household expense for them. It's something that they always talk about. And even if they're saving a couple cents a gallon, that adds up to them because they could be filling up 3 times a week, 4 times a week. So it's really important to them. So we found that using monetary incentives to give money back to the users has been a really sticky way to get them back in the app and using us. So the first example you see here, titled Make It Personal. I know we've all been talking about personalization. This example is extremely personal to the user. So brief overview, within our Pay with Gas Buddy program, we have a paid membership, and that offers users an additional discount as well as roadside assistance. It's a monthly fee to be a part of that program. And what we noticed when we were testing the program and enrollments into it, we found that over 95% of users that were joining were actually coming from our free program. So we weren't moving net new customers into this paid program. It was all existing free users that were moving into it. So when we launched the program, we had pretty low enrollment rates. And it was hard to get people joining the program, seeing the value of the program. So what we decided to do was target our current free Pay with Gas Buddy users with a message in their push notification and email receipt after they transacted to basically tell them what they could have saved with a paid membership. So you can see in this example, the user transacts at the pump. They get a push notification that tells them what they saved and what they spent. This says, if you had a paid membership, you could have saved this, and we'll actually give it back to you right now if you join. So if the user takes the action to enroll in our paid program, we'll give them that money back on their account just by taking that action in a limited time. So when we rolled this out, we saw a 5 times increase in enrollments looking at the 3 months prior to the 3 months post this being live, which for us was really big indication that these types of messages can work. The other advantage to this is that it wasn't an additional message. It was already something that these users were receiving. We just tacked it on to the bottom of the message as a reminder about what they could be saving. This next example is similar in a way. So we've noticed that creating a sense of FOMO, and I'm sure everyone knows what FOMO is now, but fear of missing out, in a monetary sense can help kind of drive that transaction. We have this feature within our app that's free to use. It's called Deal Alerts. And what it does is it's a flash sale on gas. So you go into the app, you activate the deal, you have 4 hours to get the extra savings at the station, and then that money comes off your purchase automatically. Our situation here was we had low activation rates. So we were noticing that a lot of these deals were being unused, even if people had them available to them. So this particular message is a bit, the back end's a little bit technical, but basically how it works is we're reminding users that they're missing out on this free savings, and it will fire to them when they transact at the pump and they haven't activated the deal. So after their transaction's over, they'll see a push notification as well as this in their email receipt of what they missed out on savings, and basically educating them for moving forward. The outcome for this was really exciting in 2 ways. So one, it actually worked to drive activation. The second, which I think is more exciting, is that we saw that 75% of those users went on to activate at least twice. So we kind of created a continuous behavior for them, which is really what we're looking to drive, especially with this feature. Oh, it's a little wonky at the top, but this example is about rewarding a first purchase. So a problem that we often have with this Pay with Gas Buddy program is users will sign up for free, they've done the work to link their bank account, they've gone through all the steps, they have the card, and they just don't do anything with it. That's not good for us because we've spent money shipping the card, we don't have an active user anymore, so we really want to get them activating and purchasing with the card. So we went down the incentive route again, throw money at people, it usually works. So what we did here, and we do this quite frequently, but we target our users who have not made a first purchase. So we know their user state, they have enrolled, they have the card, and they haven't activated or made a first purchase. So what we do is offer a limited time incentive. Basically, we usually send this out, say mid-month. They have until the end of the month to use the discount. So it's a forced, quick transaction that we're trying to get them to make. For this one in particular, we had 12% of our users go on to make a purchase from this. And when we don't incentivize, we're less than half of that through these types of campaigns. And we also send a push notification reminding users, which I'll talk about in a few slides. The last example for this behavioral data side of things is taking the math out of the equation. So we do this pretty frequently. People can get a little bit confused about, is this worth it? How much am I going to save? Do the pennies really add up? So what we did here to try, again, to get users into this paid program is to target the segment of users that we know are most likely to enroll in it with a message about what they could have saved. This is part of the life cycle of emails that users receive once they enroll and make a first purchase. So we basically just did the math for them. Hey, if you were a paid member, you could be receiving $1.79 on your fill-up versus the 25 cents that you saved. And we listed out the perks. So it's a little bit easier for the user to understand how much they actually could save in real life. And from this particular email, we had 3 times our normal rate of enrollments that we see from emails still targeting this program, but not with the math for them. Okay, so the next piece of data that we use frequently is our location data. Location data is an interesting one, especially now with the changes to iOS 13 and Android, constantly reminding users about apps using their location data. So that's a struggle across the app space right now. But what we do is we use the location to provide value back to the user in real time. Gas is a purchase that people need to do all the time, but you don't necessarily want to be reminded of it if you don't need it at that moment. So we're trying to get smarter about how we message going into the app and checking prices at the right time for the user. So this example here is focused on a small test, or program rather, that we have with a station called Loves. They're across the country, mainly like Midwest, Central America. So we have a mobile payments program with them. And it's the only mobile payments that we have right now where you can use your Pay with Gas Buddy card on your phone at these stations. So when we had launched this, there was a launch email series letting our customers know that they could now pay with their phone at a Loves. But we wanted a way to kind of keep this top of mind, this feature for them. So what we did is create a location-targeted push notification that lands on this message within our app. And it's targeted based on a user entering a fence that you can't see, a geofence we call it. So basically they're driving into a Love station. So we know that they're there. They could be there for gas, they could be there for food, whatever, but we have decided that this is the best way to try to get this message in front of the user at a time we think is relevant. So we can frequency cap these, of course, so we're not sending one a day if a user goes to Loves for their coffee every day. So we frequency capped this one, but we did see engagement rates were 170% higher than what our benchmark mobile engagement rates are towards this segment of users. So for us, it was a success in the continuous reminding of users about this feature, trying to get them into the app, et cetera. Another example for location-based data that we focus on is our station-sponsored discounts. So we work with a number of gas stations who will sponsor an additional discount for our pay users. That's usually in the form of an extra 5 cents a gallon. And the stations are usually just looking for increased foot traffic, and they found that these types of things work. So our first partner that joined with us for this was Wawa. And what we do for this, similar to the Loves campaign, is we launch an email announcing the offer to the applicable users. And then we use mobile messages to subtly remind them throughout the course of the campaign. Usually these last about 3 months, so if we're sending an email every week reminding a user about this campaign, they could be annoyed with it. So we use a similar technology to fire a real-time push notification that will drive awareness. So it will land on this message, basically just saying, hey, this is still here for you. Keep filling up here before the time period ends. This one in particular was this recent September. So engagement rates for mobile on this particular one were 145% higher than our benchmark. We also know an indicator that Wawa is happy with these campaigns because they've run 3 consecutive campaigns. And we also, our sales team used it as ways to get other brands on board for these types of campaigns. So I'll just talk a little bit about our email and mobile messaging approach and kind of how we decide what we're going to use to message our users. Email is definitely our primary source of communication. We have way more capabilities for targeting and segmentation in email than we do mobile, but we've found that mobile can be a really good tool as a reminder and an additional way. So kind of coming back to this deal alerts feature and the problem that we were having. So low activation rates, educating the user. This is a free thing that can save them up to 25 cents a gallon. all you have to do is visit the app. We were having trouble with this education piece because when we launched the program, it was all via email. We were educating them, we were providing tutorials where they can find it. But as you can see here, our email open rates are 50% desktop, and we don't have this experience in desktop. It only lives in our app. So we were finding that we were driving half of our email traffic to a page that says download the app. And if a user's not interested in downloading, they abandon and we've lost them. So this message in particular is a targeted in-app message based on a user seeing a deal alert but not taking an action. So in the GasBuddy app, there's 1,000 things a person can do at any given time, and we track those things via events. So we know if a user is scrolling on our list screen to see gas prices and they've seen a deal and they haven't done anything with it. We also know if they do something with it. But in this case, we know they haven't. So we take that data and create this targeted message that will fire a few days after a user has scrolled and seen a deal but not done anything. So it basically educates them on, what it is, how easy it is to use. They already have the card, so the discount comes off automatically. It's really just free money that they're missing out on. So what we saw from this in particular was a 10% click-through rate on this message and a 3% conversion rate. So 3% of the people that were clicking on this went on to activate and use one of these deals. And compared to email, our click-through rate was 2% for these deal alert-focused emails. Our conversion rate is a little bit harder to track since it's not a web product, it's only an app. But just the click-through rate alone was an indicator that mobile is the better messaging channel for this particular feature. And we've kind of taken that across the company to the product teams. Everyone's kind of moving forward with, okay, how do we message this better in mobile after seeing stuff like this? So this past November, had a 40% increase in utilization for this feature, and that was just looking at from October to November. So it was a really quick win for us to see. But there were also some other changes. I can't take total credit for this one, but this was a big contributing factor to the increase in utilization month over month. So just kind of overarching, mobile versus email, like what is the best user experience? So for us, mobile is a better user experience. Let's target mobile. We still do email, but it's different, a totally different layout, and the messaging is different for email now. So kind of tying it back, email first, mobile reminder. So we've had a lot of success in launching campaigns via email and then reminding users about those campaigns via mobile. So going back to that first purchase reminder, we launched it in email and mobile. They have 15 days to use the discount. We'll send a push notification, 2 days before the discount's over and say, you have until the end of the month to use your discount, as you can see here. This one in particular drove 13 more purchases in those final 2 days of the campaign, which is definitely a success for us because the campaign was only 2 weeks long. Another example, going back to the Wawa station-specific offer, is that it really resulted in a steady wave of transactions over the course of the campaign. So Wawa came to us looking for increased traffic throughout the whole time. They didn't want a spike in transactions at the beginning and then a fall off. And we've seen that being able to use those geo-targeted real-time notifications, that the traffic has been steady because the transactions were very similar throughout the 3 months. So just some takeaways and the road ahead for us. So takeaways for us would be rewarding the customer in a personalized way has driven real business results for us. So in the form of those paid enrollments. So us giving that $1.34 back to the user was a way to get them in the door. And that's a very high value customer for us because they're paying us every month. And they use their card all the time, and they take other high-value actions, so that was a really big one for us. The other one is targeted mobile messages sent at the right time can contribute to really fast improvements. So circling back on the 40% utilization increase, that was a really quick win for us month over month to see that sort of spike. And it was a pretty simple creative to put together. The logic wasn't that difficult to create in the back end. So those sorts of like quick wins that can drive that sort of increase month over month is really exciting for us. And kind of moving forward, after doing a lot of testing and kind of rolling out a lot of new features in the past year, we're really focused on more real-time notifications. So kind of going back to gas is a purchase that people need all the time, but you don't really want a message that says, go fill up now if you just got it yesterday. So really trying to figure out the best way to let users know, you have a deal near you. We know you haven't filled up in a week, so you might need it, stuff like that. And we also, like I mentioned, have a lot of features that we're trying to promote in the app. So we're gonna focus a lot in 2020 on prioritizing those messages and trying not to put the wrong content in front of the user that might not be interested. So if a user's not interested in joining Pay with Gas Buddy, we still want them to use the app. So let's focus on app messages for them. For Pay users, let's focus on our paid membership offer and other features that they can use. So that's really where we're looking to go is to make the messages more personal in a way that the user actually really wants to see them. And that's it.
Kristen, thank you so much. We have time for questions from Kristen. Over here.
Mike Pattison, Vail Resorts. When you say mobile messaging, I saw a lot of push up there. Do you do SMS as well?
We don't do SMS right now. We do push notification, in-app alerts, and we have an inbox within our app, so you can read messages in there like an email inbox.
And is the in-app to avoid losing a connection with that user because a lot of people opt out of push? So you can still have an indicator that there's a message?
Yep, so we can badge an inbox message so the user knows there's something to look at in the app without sending a push notification. We send push notifications on a more rare basis because they're a little bit more invasive than an inbox message.
Since you have the real-time channel of, I'm sorry, over here. Since you have that real-time channel of mobile apps, I wonder how this has changed or informed your email strategy in terms of how real-time can email be? An email message could certainly get across in a timely manner that you haven't filled up in a while.
Yep.
Things like that. So what have you learned about the ways in which you can use email and timing and how real-time email can be for your users?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a lot of life cycle emails built out that are triggered off of a certain number of days and stuff like that. But we don't know if it's exactly the right message. We have, what we've seen is positive results in that space. But I think that there's a lot of learnings we can take from how people function within our app and how likely they are to take an action if it's more native to the experience that they're looking for. So I think for email, we have a lot of segmentation strategy in place and a lot more options for personalization, but I think the timing is the part that we really need to work on, especially if we're driving users to more web experiences in email. Like, how do we optimize that to kind of make sure that we're not sending users constantly to the download the app page and it makes more sense in email, and kind of balancing the two between email and mobile.
And finally, as a wrap question, what are you getting from, what are you seeing, behaviors are you seeing from the users in terms of their preferences about the channels that they prefer to get to in terms of, say, unsubscribe from mobile alerts as opposed to unsubscribe from emails, and how much control they have over how they're being connected?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have an email preference center, and we're actually building a mobile preference center because we don't have a really a really mobile preference center right now to be able to cater those messages a little bit better. I would say email is probably our most, as far as our larger sends, we definitely see better engagement across the board in email, which is why we focus mobile on the more targeted. We try not to send a ton of push notifications to our entire mobile base that might not be relevant to them. We usually save that for time-sensitive promotions or a new offer, stuff like that. So I think email is definitely our channel where users are more engaged. We also only send to 90-day engaged email users, so we still continuously see really strong email engagement rates. And the mobile, it's a little bit harder to track without that preference center, but I'm sure we'll kind of get down that path in 2020.
Kristen Healy, thank you so much. We're going to conclude the morning with two sections, both focused on sort of the everyday headaches and pains of working email. Many of you met Amanda on the first day. She led a roundtable on deliverability. Those of you who weren't at that roundtable may wonder, how does Miracle-Gro have problems with deliverability? But you're about to find out that many brands, for many reasons, can suddenly find their email responsiveness drop precipitously and have to figure out quickly how to deal with it. Amanda is a returning champion of the Email Summit. She's been here several times. She's the manager of CRM and consumer data at Scotts Miracle-Gro. She's in charge of growing the database, but also leading the charge on the marketing side for new direct-to-consumer brands that Scotts Miracle-Gro is developing. Amanda's going to join the panel afterwards, but she's going to give a short presentation now on the deliverability woes that Miracle-Gro experienced and how they responded to them. Amanda?
Thanks. All right, hey everybody. So I'm Amanda, and I'm from Scotts Miracle-Gro. I want to give you a little background about our company. So we've been selling fertilizer for 150 years. We actually did not acquire Miracle-Gro or kind of any of our other brands until the 90s. So the past 20 years, we've been acquiring kind of a group of brands. So Ortho, Roundup, Tomcat, you probably are familiar with some of those brands. And we've also expanded into the hydroponic business. So think of Hawthorne. And just recently, this past year, we're actually expanding into the digitally native realm. So launching digitally native brands as well as going into subscription models. So a lot of new stuff on the horizon for us, but we still have our core brands, Scotts Miracle-Gro, Fert and Dirt. So I want to talk to you about inbox placement and deliverability today. So we all know this. It was talked about yesterday. 99.9% of emails that get delivered to spam, they never get opened. So if you don't make it to the inbox, nothing else matters. You might have a really catchy subject line. You might have a creative design. You've got a promo product code that, you want to sell your products. Well, that consumer never received that message, so you're not going to make revenue and you're not going to get that communication out. If you don't make it to the inbox, you can't build a relationship with your consumer. So it kind of comes back down to, well, deliverability is really complex. It's hard, and the reason it's hard is because there are a lot of things that factor into it. So when you think of, having a clean list, we've got DCAM, DMARC you have to consider, making sure that your IP is warm. There's so many different things that factor into it. Super confusing. I will tell you, this past year, I've learned a lot about deliverability because of the situation we had. I didn't know a lot about it beforehand. It's something that is on the back end that you don't realize how important it is until you really have a problem. But then you times all those factors that impact deliverability by all of the different ISPs, and it just makes deliverability super, super hard. So I'm going to talk about a situation where our brands got blacklisted this past year. The worst of the worst. So, the worst thing that could happen when it comes to deliverability happened to us. And it can really happen to any brand if you're not doing the right things. And then I'm going to talk about our road to recovery of how we made it back from kind of rock bottom. So a couple years ago, we switched CRM platforms. Not an uncommon thing to do, but it's a long process. You have to really take your data from one CRM platform to the other. There's a lot of transitioning and a lot of things that take place. So it took probably about a year to really pull all of that data into our new CRM platform. September 2018, I was told, so I was brand new to the company. We're talking 1 month in, and I was told by our business intelligence team who manages our consumer data that we had about 1 million consumers across all of our core brands floating in our data lake that had not yet been brought into our new CRM system. But the project was finally ready to push those in. So I thought, this is great. A million people is a lot of people. But I was also a little skeptical, and I asked all the right questions, like, okay, do we know information about these consumers? They are our own data. We sent emails to them before, but how long have they been active? So I asked all of those questions, and I got the green light on all of them. These are good consumers. We've emailed them in the past, and we need to just continue to email them. So I thought, okay, great. I'm going to just continue with our email plan. So October, we were just sending out our emails as planned. One particular email that's relevant in October, our brand Ortho, which is bug and pest control. So we sent an email out. Open rates plunged. And when I say plunge, we're talking 3 to 5% open rates. So I instantly knew something was wrong. Was a little worried. I checked kind of the metrics on the back end. We had a 15% hard bounce rate. That's bad. So I knew it had to do with the people that we had brought in from the data lake. So I thought, okay, well, now that we have all those hard bounces out, we should be good, right? Moving forward, let's IP warm in the month of November, and we're going to get back on track. It's okay. For us, during this time period of like September to December, January, it's actually off season for us. So we were lucky. We had the time to do the IP warming. So in November, I thought, let's start out really slow. We had an email that we were just going to start with 100 people a day, our most engaged and active folks, and then we warmed it through the entire month of November. And with that, we did see an improvement and increase in our open rates to the point where I thought, we're good. We are back on track. I'm feeling good. We are now at a high sending volume. Let's continue on as planned. In my head, I didn't even think about deliverability. It was something I wasn't super knowledgeable at the time, so I thought we were good. December, we sent a higher volume email out, and we saw the open rates go back down to 3%. I thought, that didn't work. The whole IP thing, warming, it didn't work at all. What's going on? So talk to our CRM platform and ask them, hey, like our customer success manager has to know what's going on. You know, we did all this rewarming work. What is going on? Why are we back down? And she took a look and saw that we had been blacklisted. So the culprit was that one particular brand. We sent an Ortho back in October. We sent another email to Ortho in November, and it just caused us to be blacklisted. So, of course, that's kind of a big problem for us. But how did it actually impact us as a brand? So a little background about how we have our sending domain set up. And this is really beneficial to us 99% of the time because Tomcat, Ortho, Roundup, those are brands that we don't send to on a really regular cadence because that's the cadence that people want to be talked to for those brands. So being on the same shared domain as Scott's and Miracle-Gro, which we send a lot more frequently, helps with keeping them warm. So it really is a huge benefit for us most of the time. In this situation, it was bad because Ortho now brought down all of the rest of the brands. We were blacklisted for all of them. So just to show you the data of how this impacted us, if you look at the top graph, the inbox placement, that blue line is actually Ortho, their inbox placement, and then you can also see how it impacted those other brands that were on the shared domain. And so we were blacklisted on one primary blacklist and 22 secondary blacklists. So we had a lot of work ahead of us. And then you can also see the correlation of the open rates during that time period. So this graph shows September through January. We just kind of kept going downhill. So we needed a troubleshooting process put in place to fix this because we thought IP warming was working and it didn't. So if you ever face this in the future, this is what I recommend. One, if you're seeing open rates super, super low, 3 to 5%, check first to see if you're blacklisted. If you're not, then I kind of would do the next two things in conjunction with each other. So check your subscriber list. Are you sending to the right people? Did you accidentally send to the wrong list? Are you sending to active people? And then in that same process, rewarm your IP by sending to those most actively engaged consumers starting out. And then finally, if that isn't working, check your DMARC records. Connect with your DNS, the team that puts together your DNS records, and make sure that those are verified, confirmed, and good. And if all else fails, find yourself a deliverability expert that knows what's going on. For us, we partnered with eDataSource, and it has changed a ton for us. We've really learned a lot. We've been educated on more about what deliverability is, how to improve our deliverability, how to prevent this disaster from ever happening again. And it's really been changing, like life-changing for us as a brand. So how did we get through the road of recovery? So showing here September through August of this, so September of last year through August of this past year, you can see the first pink lines are really, that's when we brought in those million consumers that were not really good quality folks. And then December is when we got blacklisted. So you can see the correlation of inbox placement and open rates and how we went down during that period of time. The thing about getting blacklisted is it takes a lot of time to get not only off the blacklist, but get yourself back into a good positive reputation. So it took us 4 to 6 months. And then you can see kind of April, we started going up in terms of our inbox placement and our open rates. And that was across all of our brand. So season for us is March and April. That's when we're selling lawn care. That's when we're selling gardening products. So it had a big impact on our emails not being delivered 100% during that time period. But as time moved on, we continued to do all of the right things. We cut out probably 70% of that 1 million consumer list that kind of came in back in September, and it's actually what helped improve our open rates and inbox placement over time. So in conclusion, there's 3 main takeaways I want you guys to remember. 1, always use clean lists. Make sure your data is clean. Never ever buy a list. I'm sure nobody in here does that, but always use a clean list, and make sure it's your own data. One thing that we do is we always send to people who are most active and engaged. For us, and it's different for every brand, for us, being a seasonal business and people thinking about lawn care really kind of once a year, we do send our active list is 52 weeks. But in off-season, when we know people are not engaging with us as often, we do kind of dial that window down to a shorter period of activity. And then one other thing with that, what's really great about our CRM system is it automatically removes people who have hard bounced. After 1 hard bounce, you're out. We're not sending to you still. And if you have 3 soft bounces in a row, you also get removed. So that's an auto way of helping to get people who are not good quality in your list out. IP warm after off-season. And this isn't relative to everybody. For us, we are a very seasonal business, and we do have to IP warm every year in our off-season. We're in the process of that right now to get ready for January, February. But this could be relevant to other brands in that you might be sending the same send volume throughout the year, but during your holiday period, you're really ramping up your send volume. So during that time, there's a really good opportunity to slowly warm your IP so that you're ready when that Black Friday hits and you're not going to have any deliverability issues. It's just a best practice. And finally, be proactive by testing. And what I mean by this is we leverage a lot of third-party tools. So eDataSource, we use their design tracker to make sure our subject lines and our content isn't spammy. We also leverage Litmus to make sure we're rendering properly across everything. Because if you're not rendering properly, you could get some spam complaints. And then the one thing that I always double, triple check is making sure your unsubscribe link breaks. I've been on a panel before where I've had the unsubscribe link break and it's a disaster. Not only is it a compliance issue, but you get people hitting the spam complaint button and then you're impacted with your deliverability.
That's it. Great. Amanda, stay right there. Thank you so much. Stay right there. Hold your questions because we're going to have Tara and Sonia come up and have a panel with a broader discussion about solving for some of these everyday headaches of email. So grab a seat, and we're going to do questions at the end for you with in the Q&A session for the panel. Tara Clark has been to many of our summits. In fact, enough so that she knows what her fellow email summit attendees want to hear. And this is an idea that Tara brought to me this year of let's have a panel that just talks about the everyday headaches of running email, the things that are occupying you day to day, the things that come up and the problems that need to be solved, and how innovation can take place within that everyday in the trenches, dealing with the problems of managing email and managing email within a larger marketing infrastructure. As I said, Tara Clark has been here many times before. She's the Senior Director of Lifecycle Marketing at Zillow Group. She oversees re-engagement, retention, and loyalty. Also, as I've thanked Tara many times before, she and Zillow helped my wife and I.
I always say finish strong, so that's what we're doing. We're finishing strong. Thank you, Steve. My name's Tara. I run the email teams at Zillow. B2B and B2C marketers on my team. This is one of my favorite events. Thank you to MediaPost's for having me, and to all the sponsors. I find that this is the best use of my time, these 3 days, in terms of events, the access to other really smart marketers, and then in addition, partners that we currently work with today. We have several that are here. And then also new opportunities for new partnerships. So this is a great event. Continuing the icebreaker theme, before we go too far, I wanted to say, not a sandwich, cat and dog, GIF, Prince, John Muir, and mine to the ladies, who I will have introduce themselves and then answer all these questions. What is your favorite book or author, the one that you actually feel, and the one that you say when you want to seem more credible? I'm a passionate fan of Stephen King, but when I'm talking to people that I want to have more lit cred with, I always say Margaret Atwood. Yeah, Amanda, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda, just chatted with you from Scott's Miracle Grow. For the book that I love, and I love it, and don't judge me. I'm in my 30s, but I do love Harry Potter. I grew up with Harry Potter. I love the book series. I'm not a super fan of the movies, but oh my gosh, I could read them over and over. But that's not usually what I tell people. I tell people the book Presence by Amy Cuddy. It's really interesting. It's kind of that psychological aspect of behavior, how you talk, how you sit, and how people kind of read you. So super interesting. But to go through all of the other icebreakers that have kind of been through. So hot dog is not a sandwich. Team dog, GIF. I'm a country fan, so I love Jason Aldean. And if I had to go back in history and meet somebody, it would be Frank Lloyd Wright. I was actually previously in architecture school. I wanted to be an architect, and I love him. He's my favorite architect.
It's a pretty solid list. My name is Sonia Williford Gill. I'm manager of CRM at 7-Eleven. I've been there for about 2.5 months, so I'm a veteran at this point. If I had to go through my list, I'll get through the list first and then I'll answer the last question. Hot dog is not a sandwich, that's gross. Team dog for sure. GIF, not even a question again. Favorite artist or band would be David Bowie. And if I had to go back in time and could meet someone, I think it would be Kurt Vonnegut. He's a favorite author of mine, not the one I'm about to list in a second, but would be an amazing conversation. Probably a lot of sarcasm, but a lot of learnings too. As far as my favorite author or favorite books to read, I don't tell anybody this because it's everybody's answer now, following along in the fantasy theme. George R.R. Martin, I really did enjoy reading the Game of Thrones books, but after the series and everything else, I just don't really talk about it anymore. As far as my favorite author that I would tell somebody when I want lit cred, Victor Villaseñor, Reign of Gold is probably one of my favorite books. It's an immigrant story, and it's beautifully told. It's just an amazing story, so.
Hello? Good? Oh, yeah, there it is. I know neither of those books that you just recommended, so I'm going to check them out. I like this topic for a couple of reasons. As Steve mentioned, I pitched this to him. It is useful therapy for us all to be in a room talking about these things. Often, at our businesses or places of work, trying to explain why deliverability matters or why CCPA is important can fall on deaf or just challenged ears, I guess. And so it's helpful for us to spend time in the room talking about them, but I also do like the ways that we can learn from each other. Sometimes I think there are simple innovations in what I had been thinking of as routine maintenance. Routine maintenance means a lot of things. The big topics are obviously like deliverability, compliance, but there's a lot of work that is part of our jobs. The tools we use, how we build a team, I guess that's one thing I'm always asking people is how you build your team, especially if you're on the marketing side, or how you partner across your organization to get your work done. And so my goal for this conversation was basically to hear about some examples of what we think of as routine maintenance and what we might learn from each other, and then pitch the roundtable at the end, where we'll be going a little deeper on some of these topics too. So Amanda, you started us off really well, I think, with your lessons. Do you want to keep going along that story, sort of give us some more tips for what we can do to approach this topic going forward?
Absolutely. So when I ask people at my company what they think I do at work, they say, oh, you just push the send button, right? It's email. It's easy. But what they don't understand is all of the things that Tara was saying that go on in the back end to make the email machine work. Without all of that stuff, like I said, we got blacklisted. If people don't get their emails in the inbox, nothing else matters. So yesterday, kind of tying in, there was a really great panel called Vetting the Data, and it really talked about having a clean list so that you can be compliant. I'm going to dig a little bit more deeper into kind of having clean data, both first-party and third-party data, because it's not just important for compliance, but like I was talking about deliverability, but also personalization and your segmentation. So when thinking about first-party data and how you're capturing your emails at acquisition, that's where we really start as a brand. You want to acquire quality consumers into your database. So at the point of acquisition, we typically use a third-party email validation tool to validate that the emails are good and coming into our. We don't bring them into our database unless they are valid. So what's really great about this is, so we have different points of acquisition. So we kind of have a pop-up on the website. We acquire people through paid acquisition, all these different ways. But at the point of acquisition, there's kind of a little pop-up. If you accidentally mistype your email in, it just says, hey, this is an invalid email, and the person can go ahead and correct it. This really helps to prevent any spelling mistakes or just invalid emails going into your database, causing hard bounces. And then there's people who put in fake emails that aren't even real. So preventing all of that is huge. And you can do that with just simply using an email validation tool at the point of acquisition. Also, kind of early on when you're acquiring your first-party data, one thing that we like to do is actually make sure that we label each acquisition source with a name so that we're able to differentiate the different sources that are coming in, and we apply that to the consumer. This really allows us to analyze the different acquisition sources to see what's working and what's not. And this is especially important for paid acquisition. If you're putting money behind bringing people into your database, you want to make sure it's quality people and that you're targeting the right audiences. So if you're not, what we do is on a monthly basis, we'll go in and actually segment those people that we brought in through paid acquisition, check to see what their open rates are, their click rates, and see what it is, if it's above or below benchmarks. And if it's below, we go back to the table for our paid acquisition strategy and make sure that we shift to who we're targeting to, because we might just not be pulling in the right audience that's interested and engaged. And this is a really great opportunity to actually drive your acquisition strategy. If something's not working, don't keep doing it. Do the things that are working. For us in particular, a couple years ago, we did a sweepstakes with MLB, and basically you put your email address in and you could potentially win 2 tickets to an MLB game. Those people did not want to receive Scott's emails. So I got them, put them in the database. They performed terribly. They did not care. They unsubscribed instantly. So going forward, we don't use sweepstakes as an acquisition source because we know it doesn't work and people are just not interested. So first-party data, when you're thinking about it, think about it at the point of acquisition. Get all of the good data, quality people in the first place. And then kind of to reference what I was talking about with deliverability earlier, list hygiene. Make sure that you are sending, you're always checking your list. Make sure you're sending to the most quality people. If there are people on the list that are not engaging with you, don't send to them. And then one thing that we do, like I had mentioned, 52-week mark, we only send to those in that active period. And then what's really nice about our CRM system is they kick out the hard and soft bounces automatically, so we don't have to think about that. So then shifting over to third-party data, if anybody uses third-party data to kind of enrich their first-party data, there's kind of some tips there as well. So for us, we actually use Acxiom data to enrich the people that we have coming into our database. First-party data that we actually collect are email addresses and zip codes. But one thing that's really great for us is we use Acxiom to bring in those relevant fields that are super important to our brand. So there's probably hundreds of fields that you can get kind of from third-party vendors when you're bringing in that enriched data. I think the key to that is bringing in what's relevant, because there are a lot of things that you can bring in, but if it's not helping you with personalization and your segmentation, then it really isn't a good idea. So for us in particular, one piece of information we like to bring in through our third-party data is if you are a brand new homeowner, you've never had a home before, for us, that gives us the opportunity to segment that group and send them a different personalized content message related to lawn care that we would send that would be very different to our consumers that already know about lawn care. They do it year after year, but we can really present them with personalized content. The other thing related to third-party data, again, going back to list hygiene, you need to make sure you're constantly updating it on a specific cadence. For us, when we are acquiring new users on a monthly basis, we add kind of that third-party enriched data. But then on an annual basis, we make sure we send all of our active lists back to Acxiom to update all of those records. And by updating those records, we know that we have the most up-to-date information about our consumers. And part of that is super important for us as a business because people move in a period of a year. And zip code is a really key component to our segmentation just for lawn care because, the grass type in Florida is very different than the grass type in Boston, Massachusetts. So if we promote a product in Florida, it's probably not the same product we would promote in Boston, and you can actually burn your grass. So it's super critical to have the most update to information. So kind of going back to how critical it is to have clean lists and clean data in order to help you with your deliverability, personalization, and segmentation. And then finally, I guess the one key takeaway that I would say for all of this, don't be afraid to cut your list. I think there's always this intimidation of, I have to send to everybody. You get the whisper in your ear from leadership saying, well, why don't we just send to all? What's the problem with that? It's okay to say no, and it's okay to explain why. I think people are open to understanding why, and we always say, go back and test it. Show that the most engaged people and not everybody, you're actually going to have higher open rates than sending to all. So don't be afraid to cut your list. That's kind of my one key takeaway, to make sure that you are sending personalized information and you're segmenting properly.
We always say get more out of less with regard to that, right?
Exactly.
I feel like we should talk about future partnerships between new home buyers and teaching them how to. We should talk about that.
That'd be perfect.
All right, opportunity. I have two questions for you before we move to Sonia. You had mentioned IP warming every year. Is that because of the seasonality of your business?
It is, and I would say it's unique to us. It's probably not unique to every brand. We really don't have a lot of relevant content or products to even talk about at this time. I mean, just think if you received a Scott's Lawn Care email right now and you live here in Utah, it's kind of weird. You're not thinking about lawn care right now. And honestly, you're not going to buy somebody in your family a bag of fertilizer for Christmas. So there's really not a lot of content opportunities. So we don't go completely dark, but we kind of talk about the things that could be relevant. So that's when we rely on Miracle Grow and talk about indoor growing and indoor plants.
Thinking about IP warming every year makes me be like,
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
And then the last one, you mentioned validation. Do you partner with someone on validation, or do you have a homegrown tool?
Yeah, we actually use Validity, so third-party tool.
All right, shout out Validity. I learned something amazing from Sonia, who I'm going to have introduce herself. But the thing I learned was that 7-Eleven will deliver beer to you.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's
Not
weird and amazing. But Sonia, please tell us who you are and what your job is.
So my team, manager CRM at 7-Eleven, my team handles all of our external communications, and the two products that we kind of service, I suppose, if you want to call it that, are our loyalty program, which is 7 Rewards. We have an app. And then we also have a burgeoning delivery program, which is called 7 Now. It's not everywhere, but yes, one of the big claims to fame for that program is that we're able to deliver alcohol. So it's especially good if you're partying and you run out of something to drink, you don't want anybody to go back out and get anything. You can actually have it delivered in 30 minutes or less. In November, I think we were under, so it was pretty good.
That's amazing. So can you give us a favorite example of what you would think of as routine maintenance and the way that you approach it?
Absolutely. I like that you call it favorite example, as though this is such a fun topic, right? One of the things that I learned pretty quickly early on in my email career is how often we just kind of set and forget triggers. Especially if we're trying to use tailored content and build those triggers out, for example, onboarding content. Or in my past life, I worked in video games, so we had an onboarding program that was related to if you purchased a new console. At 7-Eleven, I've actually I'm very fortunate to have joined early on in their CRM, bringing CRM in-house. And so as we're building out journeys and triggers and things of that nature, all of this stuff came flooding back. Because I realized, as we're setting up these programs, we need to ensure that they're fairly evergreen, but if they're not going to be evergreen, then we check in on them pretty frequently. And not only for the content that's in them, but even more importantly, whether or not they're still doing what we anticipated they would do. Oftentimes you build an onboarding program and you're like, yes, it's done. It's gonna make everybody so comfortable with their program, we'll never have to talk to them again. And you realize that that's not, you have to check trend lines, maybe not every day, but let's look at it at least monthly and just kind of review, hey, are these onboarding programs still working? Are we seeing, a change in our volume? How can we help assist with that? Are we still getting the right message across? Oftentimes, for redemption tiers on some rewards programs, the tiers change. The items that you can redeem for change. So how do we ensure that we're keeping up with that? And it's not necessarily innovative. It's called a calendar, which I know has been around for a while. But we've decided that the best way to handle that is to put on the calendar as a quarterly thing. It's not the most fun thing ever, but it's important that we go in and look at it. And actually, the presentation this morning by Yes Marketing gave me a great idea, just getting that all in one centralized location. Right now, we're handling it with a shared drive. That's great, but I'd rather it be something that anybody can access at any time. It's simple stuff, like just making sure the dates are correct in your footer, which obviously should be handled by dynamic content, but still, stuff like that. I've been in a place not too long ago that was not dynamic content. So every year we had to go in and say, well, it says 2015, it needs to say 2016, which is insanity. But anyway, so I think one of the biggest takeaways, I think, from my short career in email is that all of these triggers need to be checked up, you check up on them, ensure that they're still doing what you need them to do. What's the word I'm looking for? I lost a word. Performance-wise, there it is. Performance-wise, but also make sure that they're as refreshed as possible so that the customer experience is still, you're still giving them what you need to give them, both for themselves and for your business.
We talked a little bit yesterday about reports too,
yes.
And the standardization, I guess, or the routine maintenance around reporting. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I thought you had a great example.
Yes, we talked a little bit about reporting. When I first started at 7-Eleven, it was fascinating how many reports my team was building every day. There was a Monday report, a Tuesday report, a Wednesday report, and a Thursday report. Nothing on Friday, so you get Fridays off. But each of those reports had a different timetable, like a different set of dates. And it was interesting because day one was, how did email do last week? Day two was, how is CRM doing as a whole? But we want to know now from Tuesday to this Wednesday. So it was kind of silly how these things were set up. And we realized that a lot of those reports were being requested, or had originally been requested by people who weren't even there anymore. So how do we have an audit, so to speak, whenever we're doing reporting, making sure that the reports that we're building are valuable, because it's time sensitive, but also time consuming to build out reports, especially if it's by different dates. So it was really funny. I went to my director and asked, I said, I don't know who else is using these reports. This one's actually named after a dude who hasn't been here in 2 years. So maybe we shouldn't send that one anymore. And it was really funny. His response jokingly was, just don't send it and see what happens. So instead, we just kind of shared back on what we were producing. I don't need my team to be churning away trying to build a report that nobody's reading. But this is, we talked about it, even like automated reports that don't require a lot of time. Somebody set them up, millennia ago, and they keep delivering to our inbox, and we're like, what is this even? I think you mentioned something that showed up in your inbox, and you're like, I don't even know how to read this data. Like, who is this for? Maybe, Tara, that was you. Yeah. But it's funny, we don't always go back and audit. So I think my big advice for both the calendar, for triggers and reporting, is to go back and audit that every now and then. And it's not the most fun, but it does help alleviate your inbox a little bit. It helps with time, and it helps make sure that what you're doing is streamlined, so you're not doing a bunch of extra busy work that nobody's even reading.
You made a comment that it's not always the most fun, but one thing that put you on the spot a little bit, both of you, is there a way to make some of this fun? Like, do you have an idea for how a person can work with our internal teams that at least puts a different spin on some of this work? Question for either of you.
Yeah, so I think we kind of chatted about this previously. It's really hard to make it fun. It's like the routine stuff that you have to do. It's taking your car to get the oil changed. Right. But we thought, like, hey, why don't you just throw a pizza party? Like, take the afternoon, 4 hours every quarter, throw a pizza party, have some prizes, what we can get done, and just make it I guess, more of a group exciting thing to do. So make it something.
I advocate for a Slurpee party, personally.
Slurpee party? Yeah.
Get some Slurpees delivered.
Yeah. Honestly, it kind of has to be a group effort. We have a very small team, so asking them to take time out to audit something is, again, asking them to do something. But the ultimate goal is to make all of our lives easier. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think having that conversation, I agree. Just taking time out as a group to do it instead of asking one individual to do that, that would be a pretty tall order.
There's a reason the dentist gives out weird toys, I guess.
We'll have a little treasure box.
Here's your present for coming.
Oh, you found a mistake. Here's a treasure.
I just blanked. I had a thought about making it fun.
You could even take it off as like an off-site. Like, hey, we're going off-site. We're going to go to
add beer,
Top Golf and golf and have some drinks and knock all the work out, crank it out.
One thing I've learned, I think, over the years, when I started at Zillow, I've been at Zillow almost 10 years. So I was a team of one initially. There are 18 people on my team now. Since I started as a team of one, many of these things fell to me exclusively in the very early days. And I think I actually carried them exclusively for too long before I realized I had a lot of partners across the org to share some of these, it was like the burden of information, sort of, oh my God, deliverability is so hard, and IP warming is this thing that's really complicating, and I don't have anyone to talk to about it. Turns out you do, and so I think that's an important note just for people is, I don't know, the ways that we might make this fun are also the ways that people learn. It's the way that you're growing maybe more junior people in the organization, teaching them about some of this stuff. I've pulled people in from my team that had no idea that these were actually parts of the job. And so you're sort of adding value to their skill set at the same time that you're sharing the load, I think, of some of these routine maintenance ideas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, I had a couple last notes on this, but I want to see if there's anything else either top of mind for either of you. And then I have a shout out to a special friend in the audience too. So I just want to make sure each of you gets one more chance to.
Yeah.
How about privacy policy?
Oh, yeah, privacy policy. I think one thing that we're going to dig into in the roundtable is, how do you handle privacy policies? It's mandatory. You got to send it out to your list. I mean, we all get the privacy policy updates from all of the brands. It's usually just kind of a text email with the logo, and is there a way to make that fun? Is there a way to do that so that, does it actually impact your deliverability too? That's a thing where a lot of people, do they engage with those emails? What do you do about those? What's your strategy? Do you kind of send it out over a really long period of time? So stuff like that you have to do. It's not fun information that consumers want to receive, but everybody's got to have a strategy for that.
They do get good open rates, though. I don't know why.
Weirdly,
but
they do.
It's a text email. I remember coming here 2 years ago, and there was a short conversation about whether or not sending sneaky text emails was a good idea. I don't remember where we landed.
I also really like that sending the oops idea. That OG Kris Jenner, right? Like that was.
We sent out an email without a subject line at all once due to some scripting errors, and it got really great open, like 20%. And we're like, this, what?
Oops.
Anyway.
How are we on time, Steve? Are we doing okay? Okay. So one thing that, this is something that we've learned at Zillow, sort of along the lines of the people that you pull in to create, I guess, the team of people that work on this. And this is where I would shout out to my colleague, Rob Hoadley. Wave your hand, please, Rob. Rob will be at the round table, too, so you can come and pick his brain. Rob and I came to be colleagues in email sort of accidentally. He is on the engineering side. He actually worked with our Trulia team. So Zillow and Trulia are the same family of brands. So we're secret friends. So Rob came to us from the Trulia team. I was running Zillow email marketing programs. I learned that Rob has extensive expertise in these topics. And so our partnership started sort of accidentally. You know, I would pick his brain on some of this. He would help us out with things. Over, I don't know, maybe 18 months, we were able to formalize his role into what is now communications architect for the entire Zillow Group company. And he can talk a lot more about this in detail, but he is sort of our postmaster at scale, among many other things that Rob does for us. And so that is a thing, and this is at scale. I'm talking, this is multiple brands, B2B, B2C, and so not always the right role, but I encourage you to look for those opportunities. One thing that has come out of our partnership is this idea of an exceptional email event playbook. We have it in development, I would say, but it's about that idea of not keeping that institutional knowledge to yourself. Someone might leave, someone might not be around for the next time that you have to warm IPs, and so how are we documenting what that process is, regardless of who works at the company, so that the next time the legal team shows up and says you have to email every single person that you can find in the database with this information, that there's a playbook for handling that. So that's one way that I guess it counts as innovation, just documenting what some of that process is across the company. That's been really helpful for us. Okay, I think that touched on everything that we sort of had top of mind. I would open up to questions at this point. I'm sure people have more questions for Amanda, given the story that she told. I had an actual, like, when I saw that Spam House logo on the screen.
She faced the boogeyman, y'all.
Yeah.
Like real life.
Yeah, so questions?
Sure, this is Chester with FrontPath. Question is for Amanda. I actually worked with your brand, your predecessor, so I understand the mess you inherited. We stopped working with him well before it became a mess, I think, but that's just my own ego, probably. But one thing that stands out to me when we were engaged with you guys was the challenges around the Roundup brand and marketing that. I'm wondering if you guys have figured out a way to solve that, or if it really still impacts the rest of your marketing efforts in such a negative way as it used to.
Yeah, so I can't talk too much about it just due to privacy stuff, but I will say every brand in our core brands does have its challenges, and kind of like what I was talking about earlier, when we have one brand that is having issues, since we're all on the same domain, it does impact the rest. So with that, without going into too much detail, we have talked about breaking up that shared domain because certain brands have had issues with marketing to them. We've even considered, some of the brands that we market to, like Tomcat, Roundup in particular, it's weed control. Tomcat is rodent control. Should we even be sending emails, or should we be thinking of other ways to market to people? Because we don't have a lot of people on those lists, and part of it is like, do you really want to receive emails about rodent control? So, but it's kind of one of those things that, we get asked by leadership, keep doing this, keep doing this. So we've kind of started to consider, since it's a very different group of people than like Scott's and Miracle-Gro, of actually taking them off of our shared domain and having them on their own domain. It then runs into all the IP warming issues, but if one brand is really having a struggle with kind of deliverability because of things going on, it allows them to kind of stay in their own lane and doesn't impact anybody else. So good question.
Back here.
Walter with Message Gears. I'm afraid, Amanda, this is another one for you. I was thinking through that 1 million unengaged users data lake story that you told and the struggles that you went through with Spam House. Did you think through, or were there any kind of re-engagement strategies outside of email that you tested to try to get those 1 million to kind of reactivate with you guys, or?
At the time, I would say I was brand new to the company. I kind of relied on all of the information everybody was telling me, and I didn't know a lot about deliverability at the time. I really had never had a coworker or colleague that could mentor me in that kind of fashion. So I didn't really think through that, but of course, looking back, there was an opportunity to really take those lists and segment them down to very, very small groups and sending to those at the same time that we're sending to the already existing consumers to see how they are engaging compared to the existing. There was also an opportunity, I mean, I've been talking this whole time about using validity to validate our consumers. We should have put all of those million into the validity platform to see how many were actually still valid emails, because we had a significant number that were hard bounces. And what I found out later, and nobody was really able to tell me on the team, you know, where these all came from, but it sounded like they could have came from, they've been floating for 8 to 10 years. They could have been in there. It was really unknown because there actually wasn't a timestamp on them. So yeah, totally messed that up, you know, all on me, but they're definitely, now I know. It's one of those things where you had to learn the hard way of how to do it, and I will never do it again. I'm very, very careful about who we bring into the database and making sure it's quality people, and I validate all of the emails before I bring them in now. So very good question.
We've actually turned that into an interview question in certain instances, like, oh, tell us about like an email, you know, miss or mistake, because you're right, like everyone has them, and those are some of our deepest lessons, I think, you know. So I think, yeah, that's how we earn our stripes a little bit in this industry.
So I think we're gonna continue this in the roundtable. Tara, thanks again for bringing this great idea to us.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, panel.
Thanks.
So we're going to have our final set of roundtables, but a final word of thanks to all of you for your participation in all the different ways in which